So today we're talking to newly accredited vocal process teacher, Amy Housley of Music with Amy.
Yes.
And you're operating mostly up in the Northwest in the UK, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm based in Liverpool. So that's mostly where I work, in Liverpool and Merseyside.
And you do quite a lot of things. The thing that really fascinated me is that you go around to people and you teach them, and you also work with a choir.
Yes. Yeah, I travel to my students' houses at the moment because I'm currently renovating my own home in Liverpool. So I don't have my own studio space at the moment. So I take my piano and my keyboard and my bag of straws and tools, whatever it is I use, and I go from house to house. And then, yeah, I also travel to the choir as well at the Liverpool Irish Centre. So,
Excellent.
yeah, it's been
I
good.
know all about sticking the piano in the back of the car and
Yeah.
touring.
And the choir thing, is that something that you took on during your 12-month accreditation journey? Or was it something you started beforehand?
I started it, I think, at the same time.
Mm.
I work at PQA, which is the Pauline Quirk Academy, and we were in the West End last year because the kids get to perform at His Majesty's Theatre. And one of the mums approached me and said, "Oh, I am part of this community choir at the Liverpool Irish Centre, and we're just hobby singers, and we feel like we've got to, as good as we're going to get without a professional choir leader. Is that something you'd be interested in?" And it just really spoke to me because that's exactly the sort of stuff that I like to do and I like to get involved with. And so I started with them officially in September of last year. So I've been with them for just over a year now. So yeah, it's all ran along at the same time, really. As the choir developed, I feel like my development and the choir's development have done this, which has been really nice to see, actually.
Yeah.
And also, you were taking some of the stuff that we were doing in the classes and then basically working it straight onto the choir, which is fun.
We'd have a session on a Sunday, either a pedagogy session or a live training. And literally the Tuesday after, I go, okay, I'm going to try this. And especially with how diverse our cohort was. So we had Tim and Charlotte and Anne who all work with groups in different ways.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had lots of different things I could try. And I would be very open with the choir and go, I've just learned this on Sunday. You're going to be my guinea pigs and we're going to try it because that's the best way for me to learn, is to implement that. And then I could get, and they're very brutal. They're Scouse and Irish. So if they didn't like it, I would find out immediately. But if they did like it, they'd also be very honest about that. So yeah, that was like a practical way of doing my accreditation homework, which was great. It was great fun.
It's a brilliant way of doing it because you embed so quickly when you're trying stuff out.
Yeah. And where I was going, and you've already touched on it, Amy, is the transition from being like a performer where you sing solo, and granted, as in your area of performance, you would have also sung in ensemble, but moving from that and being a one-to-one and singing teacher, how do you move from that to working with a choir? Because it's quite a challenge. Choral leadership is very different, isn't it, from being a singing teacher?
It is really different. And that's something that I've really learnt during this whole year, this whole process, is when you're one-to-one with somebody, it can be a lot more informal and casual, and it's more back and forth, and that reaction is more immediate with that one person. Whereas with the choir, and something that I actually really enjoy is because I was a trained actor and I have worked as an actor, and it's something I don't really do as much anymore. I feel like that's my performing, because you are the person that sets the energy level for the room. So I feel like I feel like I'm performing for them, and it gets them going. And if I give the energy, they give it back to me. And it's that kind of like actor audience response that we're getting from each other. And it's really good for me because I do it right at the end of a day of teaching. So when I'm like feeling a bit tired, I go choir and I get myself into that performative mindset, and they respond really well to it. And I'm very open about that with them. And I use humor a lot to make them laugh, because some of them are quite nervous if they've never sang before. We get a lot of new people coming. So I try and use humor a lot. And it really works. But I'm exhausted by the end of the choir session. I'm like sweating and, oh my God, I'm playing the piano and I'm like, yes, come on again. But yeah, it's great. I love it.
We did an interview with Tim, which has just come out. And
Tim Uppendale,
who in fact we paired you with. He was one of your buddies.
Yes.
And he's saying something very similar about the level of energy required from a conductor to a choir. And he talks quite a lot about that. I'm really fascinated that you have the same thing.
And Charlotte Woodford of Smile My Music,
Yes.
she said that as she went through the course, she realized that although she didn't have a background as a performing singer, suddenly she realized she was performing as part of the relationship between the group and herself. So you must have found it really helpful to have particularly those three people, Anne, Tim and Charlotte, in your cohort so that you could all buddy up about how do I actually work with a group?
Yeah, being buddies with Tim was great because we both run choirs, but we both run them in very different settings and very different ways. But there is still that kind of unified approach of, as the choir leader, you are the one performing for them and they look to you. And it's not a master apprentice situation. I'm not their boss. And Tim and I talked a lot about this actually, and it's something that we share. Our opinion of this is very similar. We're not their boss. We're not in charge. We're doing our job and they're doing their job, and one can't work without the other. So you're leading them. So I'm leading the choir. But then it's really nice to lead them to a certain point where then they take over. And when we do our concerts and our gigs and all of this sort of stuff, it's really nice for me to sit at the piano and just bring them off, and that's it really. And then everything else is up to them because you put in the work as the choir leader to get them to that place. And you want to give them ownership of what they're doing. It's still their voice at the end of the day. It's not mine. It's not my choir. It's their community choir that they've invited me into. So I'm really honoured that they've trusted me with their voice and with their sound. And they set out very early on, this is our intentions as a choir. So they're my bosses, really. I go, yep, that's fine. I can help you get there. And I have. And it's great. And yeah, it's such a nice community to be a part of.
It's really interesting because I relate so much to that as a collaborative pianist and also as a vocal coach. So as a performance coach, you spot things because you have expertise in an area and you go, oh, is that where you want to go? Okay, yeah. I can get you there. And then you work to get them there. And then you just step back, you let go and you go, this is what this person wants to do. And this is how they express themselves. And then I'm supporting from then on. And it's really fascinating that you're doing that with the choirs as well, you and Tim both.
I think it's what I'm picking up from you, Amy, is that you're facilitating.
Yes.
You're there. It's almost like you're a vehicle. And I do think that your training as an actor will have contributed to that because
actors are very much about ensemble. You work together.
Yeah. Acting is reacting. If you're doing it well, we know there are always people who perhaps have a different mindset. And I think that's a really powerful thing because I know you're also very hot on social inclusivity.
Well, can we talk about that?
I wondered if we could talk about that a bit.
Just before we do, can I set the scene? We did the values session. And in fact, you were in my group to do the values session. And I really pushed you on this one because you came out with this very early on. And I went, is that really at the bottom of what you want to do? And I really pushed you on it. And it absolutely was. You were so clear on this. So talk to us about social inclusion.
Yeah, so my word that we talked about in that session was accessibility. That was a big thing for me. And for me, I think it's a no-brainer with what I do. And I think what we all do as vocal coaches or singing teachers or anybody that does a similar job is if somebody has a voice, that's the criteria. That's all I need to know is you have a voice and you want to use it in a safer way, in a more performative way, however they want to use their voice. And then I just work with their voice. That's it to me. And I don't understand why there's still this stigma in the performing arts that the performing arts is for one particular kind of person. And I get really cross when I see ticket prices and accessibility in theatres, and it's actually not good enough. I know we've come a long way, but I still see it where I think you're excluding a group of people here. And that's not my bag. I just want my door to be open to everybody, which means that everybody needs to be able to get to my door. And that was what we were talking about in that value session. So I'm currently waiting to hear back on some Arts Council funding so I can get my own studio space. So fingers crossed for that. And one of the things I wrote about in my bid was it has to be an accessible building. It has to be. It has to be wheelchair accessible. It has to be public transport accessible. People should be able to park outside if they need a bigger vehicle for whatever their reason is. Because if you have a voice and you can't get to the vocal studio, that's so demeaning and just unfair. And so it's really important to me that, and especially I work with a lot with beginner singers, I work a lot with hobby singers. If people already have the fear to use their voice, because it is scary if you've never sung before or you're singing in front of a professional, if people already have that nervousness and then you're restricting their access, you're just cutting off that amazing skill that so many people could have. So yeah, for me, it's just an absolute no-brainer that everybody who has a voice should be able to have access to singing lessons or vocal coaching or choirs or whatever. Because everyone likes to sing. It's just really good for us.
Yeah.
It's been proven that it's really good for us. So why would you restrict people from that?
Absolutely. And I think that we are moving as a profession from a sense of elitism about what is considered a voice, literally, even a voice, a good voice, and singing, towards being much more inclusive about not only being inclusive about people at different, for want of a better word, levels of expertise and desire with their voices, but also an understanding of the voice as part of the whole person and the ownership of themselves and their ability to express themselves and to connect with people. And this is a hugely powerful thing when we're starting to look at the idea of social health, which is something that the World Health Organization has identified recently as being a crisis.
Yeah.
And more people who've trained as in elite performance are moving towards working with voice in the community, which I think is a really powerful thing.
Yeah. And I think as well, I work with a lot of beginner singers who assume that the only reason you need singing lessons is because you want to be a professional singer. And that's not the case at all. Yes, that is what we do. Like I work with professional singers and all of that sort of stuff. But actually, you can have a singing teacher or a vocal coach, as you said, Gillian, to just learn to empower yourself with your own voice and feel more connected to your own voice. And it does identify us. Our accent identifies where we're from, and that has connotations. So I think when I first started this accreditation, I think I thought I want to be a singing teacher to work with professional singers. And I still want to do that. But something that I've learned is that actually I now have a really great toolkit of skills that I can use with people to help them feel stronger and more emotionally connected to their own voice. And then they can use that for whatever they like. That's not up to me. So yeah, it's really important that I think we as a community of singing teachers and vocal coaches keep expressing that singing lessons are not just for singers. They're for anyone who wants to feel more connected to their voice.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I want to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Given what you've just said, I want you to talk me through a first lesson with you. Somebody walks in the door that you've never met. What happens? What do you do? What sort of questions do you ask? Where do you go?
Ooh.
So I have a list of questions. There's not many that I always start with. And I am quite straightforward out of the gate with people. And I ask them, okay, why do you want singing lessons? First of all, because I want to get a sense of their own belief of their own voice. And that question opens that up a little bit. So they'll say, oh, I just want to improve, or someone's told me I can't sing, or my parents made me. So it could be any of those things. So I always ask them why singing lessons. I ask them who they listen to, just to get an idea of what they might like. So who inspires them musically, and then what do they want to sing? Because sometimes those two things can be different. I get a lot of kids that say, I like listening to Taylor Swift and I want to sing her songs. Great. Or I get people that go, oh, I really like heavy metal, but I want to learn opera or musical theatre. So that for me is really interesting when those things align, or are they completely separate? Because I think I've got quite a good knowledge of rep. My own music taste is so vast. I love rock music. I love opera. I love hip hop. I love it all. So I think I'm quite good at picking songs for people that I think there's something in there that they'll like. I always start with those questions. And then I talk them through, if they've never had a singing lesson before, if they've never sung before, I'd say, we'll start with a warm up and then we'll go gently into singing and we'll take it all at your own pace. And I'm very client-led, really.
Mhm.
I don't really go in with a set lesson plan because I think they can always change. So then I do a warm-up and I always start with like body, then breath, then voice. So warm up the body first, connect them to their breathing, and then start really gently with some singing, maybe just on a hum. But I have noticed if people are a bit scared of singing or have never done it before, I might start with speaking first
Mm.
and then move, like sneakily push them towards singing. So we'll speak, then we might extend the vowel sounds a bit more. Then we might play a note and get them to do it on that. So I have a lot of different things that I do, really, depending on the person that I'm working with. But yeah, I do like to get to know them as people, because I think that tells you a lot about them as a singing teacher.
I think it's great because
It's absolutely critical.
Yeah.
you're asking questions to find out where they are right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which means you're working with the singer in the room
Mm.
rather than going, come into my studio, I will teach you to sing. Do these exercises.
Yeah.
And I also love that you said, because you are yourself a very eclectic listener, you're able to identify, and I think this comes from your acting training as well, you're able to identify some aspect of that person that you're beginning to connect with that will enable you to find a song that they will connect with. And I think that is a huge skill that is unrecognized in singing teachers, and the amount of work that we do to find a suitable song, not simply in terms of how am I going to do skills development, but something that the singer is going to want to sing.
That's what I spend the longest doing, is choosing the right song. Because if they can't connect to it, then how are they going to open
They won't
it?
come back.
Yeah, exactly. And I always start, if it's a first lesson, I always start with a song they already know.
Yep.
I don't teach them a new song. I go, what song do you like at the moment? Do you want to try singing it? I have an iPad that I take me all everywhere. So I'm on the internet, just find the music, and then we start with that. And that it immediately makes people feel comfortable. And
It's very interesting because one of the things that we
I love
asked
that.
at the end of the accreditation program is that everybody did a little video of themselves or a little presentation about themselves about what had happened. I think it was particularly good. Your video, which we've actually put up on our socials, was particularly good.
And it's going to be on YouTube.
Yep,
It's
it is.
totally worth a watch for anybody
Yep,
listening to
I think
this.
it's 5 minutes. But
it's
worth
4
a
minutes
watch.
50, actually.
4 minutes 50. Well done. You followed the rules.
I always do.
It was really interesting because it's all about being with the person. You talk about working with the singer in the room, client-led. I think it's very interesting because the whole repertoire thing is so fascinating. One of the things that came up from the video, and it actually came up from other people as well, your whole cohort virtually said how you connect with the singers that you work with. Connection was one of the biggest things. And it's actually something that you mentioned in the video, is that when you first arrived, you were very worried. I think you are the youngest person we've ever had on the accreditation.
She is.
Thank you.
And it was very interesting because when you arrived, how did it feel to be in that group?
Oh, I felt like I'd walked into the wrong Zoom call. The whole thing was just such a whirlwind. I spoke to a very good friend of mine on at Orca, who you know, and he was one of my teachers at Liverpool, and we've stayed in contact with each other. And I had worked with him. I'd hired him as an MD for this adult acting musical theatre class I was teaching. And he was like, so what's next for you? What are you doing now? And I said, well, I think I want to go into like more singing teaching, but I just feel like I don't have the right skills. And he was like, why don't you just speak to Gillian Keys? Because you had to read her book at Liverpool. I was like, oh yeah, I did do that. Why? And he was like, have you heard of the vocal process? I was like, I think I've heard that somewhere. And he was like, just Google it. I was like, okay. So I Googled you guys and I went through some of your registered teachers and I looked at all the stuff you were doing. And I was like, yeah, I think I need that professional stamp or that qualification or these skills to get me to where I want to go. And then I had a meeting with Gillian and you were so great and you were so welcoming to me. And I spoke to you about all my experience and you were like, yes, please come and join us. You've got to do all of this training first. I was like, okay. So I was on tour. So I was on trains, watching the 12 hours, writing in dressing rooms, going on stage, coming off, getting it all done. And then I finally got onto this Zoom meeting with everyone. It was like day one. I was so excited. It was like Christmas Eve the night before. And then I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Everyone on here is so experienced. And then all the biology and anatomy that I haven't done since year 10. And I was like, oh no. And then I just really And I was my own worst enemy. That was the problem. We spoke a lot about, in those first training sessions, we talked, actually before then, on the preliminary courses, a lot of it was like, think about your client's beliefs about their own singing. And I was like, had to really question my belief about my ability to work with other people's beliefs. And so, yeah, it was a real emotional whirlwind. And then there just came a point where the pressure came off. Like, I took the pressure off of myself. And that was monumental, because for the first 4 months of the training, I was like, I need to memorize every single thing that I've learnt. I need to be able to talk through all the anatomy of a larynx, and I need to know. And then I was like, it'll just fall into place. Just do the training, make the notes, get involved. And I've noticed as well, since watching them back, for the first few months, I barely spoke and I barely put my hand up to participate in anything. And that's partly because of the other people in my house, and I was anxious about them hearing me making weird noises. And I think a lot of it was also like, I just was doubting myself and being like, we won't do a good job of it. And then I took the pressure off, and then I participated in nearly every one. I was like always putting my hand up to do stuff, because I just felt like I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to get to where I want to be if I don't consider myself deserving of this place or whatever. So that was a big thing. So anyone who's watching, who wants to do this accreditation, take the pressure off yourself. Because yeah, I've just learned so much more from going, just breathe.
I think it's so what's
Very good advice.
Yeah.
Actually.
The fascinating, and you are not the only one. This is really interesting because
everyone has their tipping point, don't
they do. And it's because there is such a lot of information in the first 2 or 3 sessions. And a lot of it is so new to people. And they do exactly what you've said, which is, obviously I don't know, but now I do. And now I need to have memorized it and be able to give a lecture on every single point that we're doing. And I think we do say a few times in the first few months, you have 24 months to embed this. And the recordings are always available. So in 12 months' time, you can go back and watch. In fact, we do recommend this, that you go back and watch something 12 months later and you go, oh, I understand it.
That old thing.
And that shows you how much you've absorbed in those months, whether you realize it or not. So I'm really pleased you took the pressure off. It does work.
Yeah. It was hard to do. It wasn't like an overnight thing. But yeah, it made life a lot easier. Yeah.
So I want to backtrack a bit, because you've talked about the pressure that you put on yourself.
Yeah.
And this is something that we typically see in people who have trained to elite performer level, whether they're a dancer or a singer or an actor or any other kind of performer, which is we put in 100%. And coming from that background, I would love you to talk about putting in 100% and what made you come to us. What was it? There was a turning point for you, wasn't there, in terms of, because you were working with the voice, you were working with performance, following your training at LIPA.
Yes.
And then?
Yeah, so I went to LIPA and I loved it. I had just the best 4 years ever, made amazing friends and gained some like incredible skills. But I think there is that drama school pressure that you're told of, if you don't give 100%, there's somebody else that will, and then they'll get the job over you. And it's so competitive, even within your year at drama school, because when we did showcase, we walked onto the stage, the lights came on, and I saw a room full of agents look at us and then just start making notes. And I was like, oh my God, like they're just comparing us all to each other. And then you feel like you're competing with your friends and then I was released into the industry and I worked as an actor musician and went on tours and traveled and loved my time. And then the pandemic hit, and that kind of shook everything. The performing arts industry just went, nope, there's no money, there's no nothing, there's no jobs. I was like, okay. And I'd always been a singer. I'd had singing lessons for years and years, classical singing lessons, musical theatre singing lessons, and that I worked professionally as a singer before I went on to drama school, and I used to teach like 1-to-1 before I went to drama school and all of this sort of stuff. And I really had to fall back in love with that. The pandemic was really hard. It was really hard for everyone. I don't think anyone had a good time, really. But just from my personal experience, I wasn't very well mentally. My mental health was on the floor. And my piano was set up. I moved in with my boyfriend. The day pandemic was announced, I was like, I live here now. That's it. No
Yes.
discussion. I'm moving in. There was a discussion. And my piano was set up in his living room, and I didn't touch it for 3 months. Just didn't touch it, and totally fell out of love with just making music for myself, which is really sad. It was so sad. And I would look at it and go, like, just play it or just sing, and then the pressure builds and you go, what if it's not good enough? And then I think, how can it not be good enough? It's me on my own in my living room. And so I really had to fall in love with the performing arts again, and with my own voice again, and with my own skills again. And that was really hard. It was like totally starting from scratch. And then things started to open up a bit more, and I directed some shows and acted. And then there's a company in Liverpool, the Merseyside Academy of Drama, and they asked me to come on board with them as a musical theatre teacher to teach the adults. And that's when I fell back in love with it again, like sharing that with other people. And it was everyone coming into the room so excited to learn a song that I was going to teach them. And I fed off that energy. So then I started to like rediscover my skills again. And then all these lovely people would be like, oh, you're so good at this and you make it so fun. And that was really important to me, was that, like, yes, I'm sharing skill with them, but also they want to come back every week. That's really important. So yeah, it was a huge journey to get to the accreditation course for me, really. And I'm going to try not to get emotional when I say this, but it really did help me to love what I do again and love my voice. Because I think I spent so long thinking I didn't have any skills, or other people's skills were better than mine or whatever. But actually getting to know everyone on the course and getting to know what they all do and what they all are all good at made me realise that I have a unique skill that I'm good at. And
Absolutely.
there's no competition. I don't feel like I'm in competition with Tim or Charlotte or Laura or Lindsay. Everyone is a specialist in their area. If I need any advice on jazz improvisation, I go straight to Molly. And I know that I don't feel like I have to then be amazing at jazz improvisation. I just have a colleague who is really good at that. And I know if anyone on the cohort needs any acting through song tips, I'll go to me or Lindsay. And it's really nice to finally feel, and I said this to Gillian in the first initial chat I had with her, being self-employed is incredibly lonely. You don't have a company. My boyfriend has Christmas parties and like social events and an office full of people he can just walk over and speak to. Whereas for years, I never had that. And I think that really impacted my mental health. Was I already felt lonely, and then we were locked in our houses. So now I feel like I have a company of colleagues in this cohort, and we lift each other up and we boost each other, and we rely on each other for any questions I need answering. I go to them. So I feel, yes, I've learned how to be a better singing teacher, but you guys have also provided me with friends and colleagues that I hopefully will have for years and years. Sorry, that was such a long emotional tangent, but we got there in the end.
Absolutely.
It's lovely, actually. And I'm really happy that you shared it with us.
Also, because the interview that we did with Laura, she's saying very much the same thing. And I want to pick up on falling in love back again with your voice and your abilities. And actually, one of the things that we feel very strongly about is that people, particularly performers, often don't recognize not just the level of skill that they have, but the level of skill that they are as people, and where their interests lie and where their history fits in. And we're very strong on, we want you to bring your whole history with you because that's who you are. And we will do our best to get you to fit your whole history into your future, because that's actually one of your biggest strengths, is who you are, how you've done, what you've worked at, what you believe, all of that stuff. Really, everything feeds into the now.
That's why we're working with the whole person. I know that people listening to this will think, oh, this is great. I'm going to learn all of this. And then I'm going to have this knowledge and I'll feel that I'm more expert and mastery. A bit like Hannah's interview where she said, tick, tick.
Yes.
But actually what really made the difference was the difference that she felt in herself and about herself. And that's what you're saying. And I think this is why I feel very proud of what we've achieved as a company, because we're very passionate about peer collaboration and community. And if you don't have anybody to reflect back on you, how can you realize your value? Humans are social beings.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And the pressure that puts on you as an individual, because if you've got no colleagues to lean on, not even colleagues, like friends or peers, you feel like you have to have every answer to every question. And nobody does in any industry, in any job. Everyone has gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think another thing about drama school training as well, which really resonated with me throughout this past year, was I felt that I had to know what my skill was and what the one thing was I was going to do. What kind of actor are you going to be? And I was like, I don't know, because I like musical theatre, but I also like Shakespeare. And then I also play the piano and I want to do that as well. But I feel like doing this accreditation, just like you said, you've got to know us as complete individuals, and we all have so many different skills. And now I feel really proud of all of the different things I can do, instead of having to go, what's my one specialism? I don't have to have one. I can have lots of different skills, and it benefits me as a teacher, because that means I can work with choirs, I can work with children, I can work with professional actors, I can work with rock singers, I don't know, like anyone. And I feel like can pick something from my history. I can pick experiences from everywhere. So that's been really good with this accreditation as well, is like not narrowing people down. I think that can be a bit detrimental when you work.
I think that's incredibly insightful.
Yes,
And I
yes.
love it, because I love that you've put what's my casting, which is the big thing in acting, which is what's my casting? What roles am I supposed to be going for? And we don't do that.
Ultimately, that's about selling. In terms of an agent looking at you all standing on the stage when you haven't even opened your mouth yet.
I thought that straight away.
They're going, yes, I need someone there, I need someone there, I need someone
You'll
there.
fit that costume.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all, and I emailed every single I didn't hear a thing after Showcase, not a peep. And all my friends were getting phone calls and emails, and I was like, I've got nothing. So I emailed every agent, because we got given the spreadsheet of who'd been. Thank you so much for coming. Here's my spotlight. Here's my show reel. Let me know if you'd like a meeting. I can do this and this. And the only ones that replied, I think I got 3 replies out of 80, were like, oh, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, they were like, thank you. We think you're a good actor, but we've already got someone like you. And I was like, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know? You don't know me as a person. Like, I'm probably funnier than they are. Like, I don't know. Like, not to slam one of the performers, but like, that just felt so. I felt like a cow in a market. Do you know what I mean? That's so brutal, but that is exactly how I felt. And it's very rare that you come across something like the accreditation where there was none of that. Like, it doesn't matter if 2 people do the same thing. It doesn't matter if 2 people do different things. Everyone is welcome. And that's why, bringing it back around, accessibility and social inclusion is so important, because everybody is unique. Even if 2 people look the same, sound the same, whatever, there is a uniqueness between everybody.
Yes.
And that's what I want people to find. That's my job, is to help people find what makes their voice unique, which is why, yeah, it's just so good, this accreditation, because there's no method. There's no, this is the way that you teach singing. This is how you diagnose your client. And here's loads of skills you can use in your toolkit to help that specific client improve on what they already have. That's it.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why I do think what's unique about it from our perspective is you get 60 contact hours where we're in the room with you, and 12 of those are one-to-ones. But you get 60 contact hours with us, and we wouldn't be able to facilitate that type of individualized learning for such a diverse group of people if we didn't have that. And it's a really important part of our ethos, isn't it?
I was just thinking, if we tried to instill, this is the way you teach, and this is the technique that you use, and this is the process that you use on a group as diverse as ours, there'd be war.
It wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work at all.
No.
So we have a few core things, but within those core things, for me, one of the most important things is how you diagnose, how you analyze who people are, what they do, what they sound like, what they're doing physiologically, what they are, it's
one of our things.
It's one of our things. Yeah. And if you know really clearly how to diagnose not just the person and the voice, but the music and the genre and the context as well, it becomes incredibly easy to create your own exercises, or to create your own processes, or to create your own steps to get somewhere to where they want to be. And so I'm very hot on, let's do diagnosis, people, because this is important. But then once you've got that diagnosis, you do whatever you want to do with it.
And it opens so many doors for you as the singing teacher, because as you said, Jeremy, you can be so specific with your exercises then. I think when I first started the accreditation, I was like, I'm going to be given a book with every singing exercise in it and I will know them all.
That's a good idea, though.
Just let me take 45 years to write it.
That's the thing. It would be like, here's one exercise, but if they sound like this, maybe do this, or but if they're struggling with this, maybe do this. And actually, I had actually really changed up much of the exercises that I was already using, but now I know why I'm using it and how I can alter it for that person. One of my case study students is a lovely girl called Kira, who's not been able to breathe out of her nose for the first 11 years of her life. So already humming was like, can't do that. Like, just can't do it. Can't make any until anyway, she can now. She's had lots of treatment. She's doing a really good job. But she's now having to learn how to use nasal sounds. So for me as a singing teacher, I can't go in with one set method because she can't do it. And it's not her fault. Medically, she couldn't do it. So it was good for me in that room. I felt really proud of myself to in that room go, okay, how can I achieve what I want to achieve for her? And that's why diagnosing clients is so important. It's so important. You have to know what they can and can't do. Or you just go, hum, please, through your mouth.
Yes. Why can't you hum? Hum harder.
Yeah.
Now you've finished your 12 months, so you become a registered teacher, which means ongoing peer support and ongoing mentoring from us. But what do you see as your future? Where are you now? Where are you headed?
That's a big question. I think my main goal is to get my studio. That's what I would love. I would love to have my own studio space in Liverpool, in the centre, that anybody can come to. I want to work more with professional actors and singers. So I love working with beginner singers and love teaching kids in my choirs. But I really want to get back into the theatre network. I used to do a lot of directing and a lot of acting, and I still have my toe in that pool. And I'd love to marry that. I'd love to do vocal direction or vocal coaching for a theatre doing a musical. Any theatres in the Northwest who are watching, I'm
absolutely.
Or anywhere. So I'd love that. I would love to do that alongside what I currently do with my private students and my choir. I'm still learning. I can't wait to do these further one-to-ones and the coffee and chats. And I've really enjoyed over the past couple of weeks going back and watching trainings. I've just started the social media training that's on the Registered Teacher Hub, which has been great because I'm trying to push my social media a bit more. And I think I want to be the person that people come to in Liverpool. That's what I want. I want people to go, oh, I need a singing teacher. And for people to go, oh, go to Music with Amy. That's not to like discredit other singing teachers in Liverpool, but I want to be up there with them. I want to be recognised as she's a good person to go to in Liverpool. That's what I would really like.
I love that because, and going back to what you started with, because you have acting training, because you have worked as professionally as an actor, you've worked as a director, you've worked as a singing teacher, you've worked as a choir leader. That's not just a very wide range of skills, but it's context. You can help people really see a much bigger context because you have such a wide range of experience. And I love that.
That would be great.
So, Amy, how can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Music with Amy. I have a website, www.music-with-amy.com. You can find me very soon on the Vocal Process website as a registered teacher.
Absolutely.
Instagram, my website is probably the main places to look for me.
Great. And we'll put those links in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Amy, it's been such a pleasure.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
See you soon.
See you later.